we have a great presentation for you today. If anyone is in the Bootcamp Network Slack community, you probably see Artem posting some videos, and I have watched a few of his videos and realized he's a great speaker and that you would all really learn from him. So he is here today to present about how to work smarter, not harder. And he'll go over he has a great presentation with different points that he'll touch on. I have your questions that you pre-submitted. So if you sent those questions in, I have them. If you did not send them in and you have questions that pop up as we are going, drop them in the chat and I will make sure they get asked. You can do this the entire time. I will keep track of all the questions. For a little bit of housekeeping, you'll be receiving an email at the end of this tech talk that will have some of Artem's resources, a link to join the Slack community if you've not already, also a link to join our LinkedIn group, and also a link to check out past recordings on YouTube. So if you do not receive that email, please reach out to me. I want to make sure that you do get that since there's some really great resources in there. So with that, I know you're not here for me. So I'm going to turn over to Artem. Again, drop your questions into the chat. I'll make sure that they get answered.
And the type of things I wanted to talk to you about is how do you narrow your job search? Because I remember when I was applying for junior positions, it wasn't that easy to filter them out because there's just so many of them. And I wasn't able to tell which one's a senior, which one's a junior, intermediate position. And as well as I'll be talking to you about where else can you apply your skills in other category in software development. And then I'll mention a little bit about, briefly talk about technologies. How do you choose what technology you should be learning and when, and the importance of Agile development. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is how to narrow your job search. I remember when I was applying for junior positions, I was using different type of platforms. There was like an Indeed, LinkedIn, Monster, two other ones. I don't remember their names by now, but today there are a lot more other tools that you can use today. And the way I actually search for a job that I want, I never go by the title, junior full stack developer, simply because different jobs or different companies have different titles for their positions. So instead, what I do is I type in the language that I'm proficient in. So let's say right now I'm attending a bootcamp and I'm learning React.js. So I'm just going to type that into a search box, and I'll see all the jobs that will pop up. And I'll start to take a look at their descriptions. What is it that they're writing about? I'll just first scroll all the way down to make sure that they're not asking for like 10 plus years of experience in React.js. But instead, I look for, if they're asking for something like 2 years in React.js and then brackets preferred, to me, it's like a flag. It says that they're looking for a junior developer because the word preferred means you don't need to have 2 years of experience using React.js. You can just have 1 year, 6 months, whatever it is. Even if you have a couple of projects to show, it's already a good plus for you. And then I read the description on what are the duties are of the job, what is it that they're doing, is it aligned with my needs, with what I want to do. And when I was looking for a job, I didn't look much at the salary at the time because to me, what was most importantly is having the experience, because the experience is what will take me further ahead, further in life instead of having a higher salary. But that being said, don't apply to jobs that are like a minimum wage, $15 an hour. The jobs that are today for juniors are somewhere in the range between 45 to 55,000 annually. And that's where a type of a range that you want to be at. And when you are searching for those jobs, try to have 10 jobs that you really like, that you would like to apply today. It doesn't matter if you just started out a bootcamp, if you're at the end, in the middle. Try to pick 10 jobs that you're really interested in and look for patterns, look for things that are in common between them. So let's say if 7 out of 10 jobs use React.js, well, make that as your #1 priority. If you see they're using Python, make that as your #1 priority based on depending on what you are attending a bootcamp for. And based on those priorities, you're filtering out the noise uh, around your industry. And by noise, I mean, you will see that there are so many tools, packages, languages, frameworks in our industry, and it's really difficult to know which one to use. And that's how I prioritize my things. So then when you'll be almost approaching to the end of your bootcamp program, so let's say you still have 1 month left, apply to those jobs because you have prioritized the languages you want to be focused on, proficient in. So what you want to do is to apply to those jobs with those projects that you have developed using those things. And you'll realize that you'll be standing out quite a bit, a lot actually, because you have targeted those jobs specifically and your uh, resume is tailored to those jobs. Uh, well, now you just talked about how to narrow your job search, but what if you have been searching for a job for several months now? What do you do? Well, this is where I want to talk to you about how to apply your skills to other categories. It's not always easy to adapt your current skills or to a new job title. However, it's a great way to further your career to find your way out of the saturated job market. To give an example, when I was attending uh, data analysis bootcamp program, I found out that in 6 months, they were able to teach not just data analysis skills, but as well as web development skills like Python, JavaScript, MongoDB. Those are the three tools that are commonly used today in web development. So if you've been applying for data analysis job, you can as well apply for web development jobs or take a look at where else can you use your skills. And same thing goes for web development. If you've been looking for React.js projects or jobs, you don't just have to look for web development specifically. I don't know if you guys know, but there's a React.js native, which is very, very similar to React.js framework. But the only difference is that it's meant to create mobile applications. So take a look at the skills you have currently acquired or you're currently acquiring at your bootcamp, at your program, and see where else can you apply them. It's not just one path you can apply them, and there are multiple ways how you can use them. That's just all what programming is about. It's not just meant for one thing, but can be meant for multiple things. And the next topic that I would like to talk about is benefits of studying new technologies. When I was starting out to a junior position, my first main stack was PHP on the back end, React.js on the front end, and MongoDB on the database side. But today, that's not my main skill anymore. I use that at my job every day. But whenever I have clients, new clients coming to me, I always go for the backend Node.js. Front end, I use Vue.js. And for MongoDB and for a database, I'm using MongoDB or Postgres, depending on what it is, depending on the features. And the way I choose my languages, oh, to be exact, when exactly I start to learn them, well, I take a look at what is getting more popular out there. So at a time when the Vue was getting more popular, I just took a look at their documentation. And to me, as a developer, documentation is the #1 thing that I look at because I'll be spending my time reading it, looking at it. And if it takes me 5 minutes to find out how to do a specific feature, how to use specific package from them, or whatever it is, well, I know that I will know that that documentation of that framework, it's not great. It's not well written. I'm not going to be using that framework then because if I'll have to waste my time, that's on you then. I mean, by on you, I mean that you'll be spending time reading the documentation, but you're not done doing any development. So documentation is #1 thing I look at when it comes to choosing specific framework or language. Next is performance. So when I was looking at performance, to me what's the most important, #1, is when I develop something for my users, I want to make sure that it doesn't take them seconds to load my page. It takes them milliseconds. And that's what I look at the most is for seconds is how well can specific framework that is new came out, how well can it do this performance? Is it different from React.js or is it better, worse? How is it? And then I start to tail it a little bit. Like I see if there could be a progress, then I'll just still stick to React.js. But on the side, while I have time at home, I'll just learn that language, build a small project with it, do something with it. Because if you've been working with React.js for a couple of years, like Trilogy does a great job of teaching you up-to-date technologies today. But again, after that, it's on you to learn those things. And the next thing where I look at is friendliness. And by friendliness, I mean to us developers. Uh, when I work with specific framework, I look at how easy it is for me to work with it. To give an example, I was working with Angular or Ember.js. And to be honest, compared to React, it's a bit harder to use it at the beginning because you have a bit more setting up to do, a bit more files to work with, especially when it comes down to building out little features. And that is something that you also do want to take into consideration because that is the time you'll be spending in the future. And the one thing that I do as well is whenever I work on something, I'm taking a look at how much time will I be spending it developing specific features. I want to be taken just a couple of hours to develop a feature, no days. To give an example, I created this little video on my YouTube channel where I was using Node.js to set up a production-ready environment for users, where they're able to register, they are able to log in, they're able to have multiple services. So let's say you can have like a user service, or let's say specific category service, and they're able to get to do all of the CRUD system. I was able to set up full CRUD system in a matter of minutes. It took me 5 minutes. Whereas if I were to use a different language like PHP, it's going to take me a couple of days. So me as a freelancer, to me, it's really important. So I learn languages only when it's necessary, only when there's a use case for me. I don't learn languages or frameworks just for giggles or for fun because that's not going to do me any good. It doesn't bring me value. Therefore, I have no need to focus on that. There might be a big hype about it in some category, in some area, but if it doesn't solve my use case, my problem, then it's not for me. And the last point that I would like to talk about is the importance of agile development. When you're applying for full stack, when you're applying for a job, a full-time position, it might not be as important. But if you're looking into, let's say, have clients, you're looking into be a freelancer, then agile is a little bit important. But I should probably explain, sorry, what is agile development? Agile development is pretty much a process where everybody on the team are aligned and know what the end goal is. And the way it always starts off is with the user, managers, UX, UI design, developers, testing. And if the testing has passed, it goes into production. So if you're working with clients, you probably should know that part a little bit because you are the one right now. You as a freelancer, you're not an employee to those clients. You are a corporation. You are running your business. So there are your clients as well. And it's going to be your job on you to know what is that they're trying to build, what are the use cases. And when I talk to them, I also let them know that I keep open communication. And by open communication, I don't mean I text them every day, I call them every day, or video call every day. What I use instead is Jira or Trello board. Those are task management tools, which means that if they want to know what is it I'm working on today, they can simply log in into those applications. And then they will see, okay, today Artem is working on this specific task. And I can see that after he's done with that task, next thing he'll be working on some different ticket. And before he has successfully accomplished other tasks. And that is also quite important to you to know because when, let's say there's a time when you're working on a specific ticket, let's say upvoting a specific post on their website, you have developed that feature, and you have tested, it works. It's on a development stage where they can go in and test it. And then the client comes to you and asks, how come there is no downvote feature? But that was never discussed during the meeting. That is not part of the ticket. And using those Jira or Trello boards, you'll see that you'll be able to protect yourself and let them know that we already had this conversation, we had the meeting, there was no mentioning in terms of having that downvoting feature. And then uh, you're saying that, yeah, I can still develop the feature, it's not a problem. But that way you're protecting yourself. So if you're looking into going into freelancing, there's like another way how you can boost your resume whenever you're looking for jobs, because then you have a little more expertise in that area. Uh, well, those are the things that I wanted to talk about it, to point out that I think are important. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that I want to talk about how I got my junior position. And the way it happened is not, I don't believe that I got junior full stack position thanks to going to 3-year program, to be honest, because the only thing I think that helped me is when I was on the interview, I was able to show them two of the projects that I was working on. The first one was like a full stack developer project, social media, where on the back end I was using PHP, on the front end I was using JavaScript, and for my database I was using MySQL. And I was able to show them my logic, how did I develop my PHP code, why did I choose this specific schema layout of my database, and as well as to show my JavaScript code. And when I was showing them my second project, the second project was a little bit different. It was a 10-hour challenge. And the challenge in there was use an Angular framework that I've never used before. Second, use make into a single page application. And then the last was making a user-friendly or desktop and mobile friendly, make it responsive. And when I showed them all of that, I let them know what I did, how I did it. It took me less time than I was expecting, and they were impressed by that. And I was kind of surprised during the interview. I never got a coding challenge. I was a little bit suspicious about that. So later down the line, I just asked them a question: how come I never got that coding challenge? They just said that they were really impressed by my resume in terms of those projects. I was able to show what I did. I was able to defend my logic or my thinking. And that's what they were impressed by. They weren't impressed by me going to school for 3 years. They didn't really care about the fact that I was a tutor, because even being a tutor, the type of languages I was helping out students with had nothing to do with web development world. It was with the system development. So to keep that in mind, to let you guys know, is that what you're doing right now is equivalently important as going to, even if not more, than going to school. Plus, a lot of you, I believe, have already experience in working professionally, and you can use that on your resume as well. That is something that we look at it as well. But those are the things that I wanted to talk about it, to mention. I hope I answered some of the questions you already guys had. But if you have more questions, I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And anyone can drop questions in the chat, but right now we're going to focus on the questions that were submitted from the registration. So anytime I'll be jumping back and forth. So go ahead and drop those questions in the chat if you have any, and I will get started with some questions that were pre-submitted. So Artem, let's talk about the fact that COVID happened and the markets got flooded with bootcamp grads. I know you mentioned that you did some projects. What other tips do you have for people to stand out when they're applying to these jobs and to make their resume look a little bit different or their portfolio look a little different?
Right. Well, yeah, COVID did change things a little bit. I remember, like, for instance, when I was applying to junior jobs, I'll apply to like 10 jobs a day. So I was really eager, and that's what's my process. And a couple months ago, when I was applying to jobs, I wasn't applying to 10 jobs a day. I applied to like 4 or 5 jobs. But I've noticed that they weren't posting as many jobs as they used to. However, those things are changing a little bit right now. Like a lot of companies there are looking for interns, they are looking people to hire. And the way to stand out on those in this tech world is using more than one platform first when you're applying to jobs. Don't just use Indeed or LinkedIn specifically. Find whatever it is you can find. Apply to whatever job to a job on whatever platform it is. And to stand out, yeah, like the main thing I see how students standing out is by having this eager to learn. Because to me, when I hire interns for a position, I don't need for them to learn React.js 100 to 100%. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is, are they willing to learn? Because right now you're going into an industry that is a fast-paced environment. As I mentioned before, React.js is something you're starting off with, but 5, 10 years down the line, you'll find yourself going through 4, 5 different frameworks in JavaScript alone on the front end. And that's where you're going to have to uh, uh, learn a lot more things. And that's where you're going to have to show if you're willing to learn or not. That's what's most important to us. The person that stands out to a lot to me is the one that has not the number of projects, but how well they can defend them and where do they see technology is heading. That was like one of the questions I was also asked as a junior. Where do I see the tech world is heading? And my answer was, yeah, like I see a lot of things are going into a web world. System was still there, but websites is something that I was passionate about it. And I saw myself working there and I saw a lot of things are heading that direction because building out a website is much, much simpler compared to system applications. And to be honest, today using JavaScript, you can still build system applications. So if you can argue why you choose this path, you're just showing your knowledge. You're showing that you're not just a person who went to class and please give me a job. You're the person who is willing to learn, reading stuff, and being exposed to new things out there.
Great. Thank you so much for answering that. And John actually had to put a question in the chat that kind of deals with the same thing of standing out, but this one is about how to lead your interview, to focus on your bootcamp projects and knowledge opposed to your general knowledge. So how can you take that interview and flip it so that you're able to focus more on what you're doing with your bootcamp knowledge and your bootcamp projects?
And so like the other background, like, is it different type of professional background is that the person is having? Like, I just want to get a little bit of a better picture to give a better answer.
I didn't have any background on that one. John, if you want to drop some of your background in the chat. But let's just say a majority of the people here have just the general bootcamp knowledge. I believe everyone thumbs up. You have that bootcamp knowledge. You have your bootcamp projects. So you're right out of the bootcamp. That would really be the background.
The way, so could you repeat the question one more time, sorry, then?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So the question is, how would you lead your interview? So if you're in the interview, how would you lead the interview to focus on your bootcamp projects and your bootcamp knowledge versus that general knowledge where sometimes the interviewers will ask very broad questions and expect you to know the answers.
Right. The way I'll lead with that is, well, first, what you've been taught at bootcamp, you've been taught by professors that are currently working, that are currently professionals in the industry. So the type of projects you'll show them, whatever project that is that you have worked on, no matter how big, how small it is, I will still show it and explain it to them. How did you develop it? What was your thinking process? Because if you're just gonna tell them, yeah, this is what I have developed, but you're not gonna explain it to me, how did you develop it? If you're not gonna tell me what was your thinking process, I'm not gonna know how you came to that conclusion. I'm not gonna know what your thinking process is. Or in fact, I'm not even gonna know what type of tools you used to develop it, what type of package it is. To me, think of a person as a blank page who doesn't do programming, who doesn't know anything about programming, and you're trying to explain it, what it is that you worked on and how is it working, and as well as what are the things you would improve on, because that is one of the other great things to talk about is, okay, I see right now my project is running on Heroku. And since Heroku is a free tool, it does X, Y, Z in a negative way. But if I were to push my project, let's say, into DigitalOcean, I see that right now, this whole server that I'm paying $4 or $5 a month is my own server. It doesn't go down. It doesn't need to restart. I'm in control of it. And it's able to handle a bit more of the users, a bit more of, let's say, traffic, or performance of my application. So whenever you talk about something, you can talk a little bit about architecture. You don't have to talk about that, but talk about the things you could improve on, or if you had more time to work on something.
Perfect. John, I hope that answers your questions. Thank you so much for submitting that one. We're going to go back now to one of the pre-submitted questions. Again, kind of going on with the whole interview and all that. The question is, most of these job opportunities require some familiarity with front end as well as back end engineering. Which one should I focus on after the boot camp? Which one should I still focus on my skills on while I'm interviewing?
I will say the best thing for people to do is to focus on what is it that they like in the web industry. The one mistake I see people do is that they trying to be a full stack developer, they will try to bite a bigger piece out of the cake. And then they'll start to learn all these technologies, all these things about backend, front end, where they already have a really good skills, either on front end or backend. So what I see people do is they will apply to only front end position. They'll start to do projects in the front end only. And believe it or not, but companies are investing in you. So if you are as investing in you, which means that they do want for you to learn more things, not just the front end, but to be also professional back end. So actually you'll be exposed to the back end as well. Oh, and the other way around, if you're doing a back-end work, you'll be exposed to front end. That's what everybody are doing. And that's what I have noticed a lot of my colleagues did in the past. That is something that a lot of developers, successful developers do, is that you don't have to go into a full stack developer right away. You can always transition yourself to be a full stack developer later on. The first thing, again, you should focus on is getting a web developer job. It doesn't matter if it's a front end, it doesn't matter if it's a back end, as long as you're comfortable with it, and as long as you know that the company is willing to invest in you. That is the most important about companies. That is something that I also look at.
Great, thank you so much. Career changes are a big thing right now. Just not even just COVID, just in general. What tips do you have for someone who's trying to make that career change into the tech field, whether it be a data analyst, a data engineer, a junior developer? What are your tips?
Again, yeah, like if you're gonna be transitioning into that field, first analyze on what is it you need to learn. I've noticed some people who are completely new to programming, they start to learn C, they start to learn C++, they start to learn HTML, Java. And my question is, but why? If you decide to be a web developer, because being web developer doesn't ask you to know C programming. So even if I'm going into, let's say right now, business world, the first thing I'll take a look at is what is this one common thing all the companies are looking at besides working experience. I'll take a look at what is it that they're asking to know. If they're asking for me to know Excel, to work with Excel professionally, well, then I see that as a priority, because it's not just company A, company B, company C, it's all 10, 100 companies are asking for that. I'll be focused on that specific thing. That's gonna be my first priority. I'm always breaking things down apart in terms of priority and relevance of the field I'm going into. And that's how you should be also thinking about things, breaking them apart. It doesn't matter what they say out there, compare all the things together and notice what is the most important thing it is for this specific job, if it's data analysis, if it's web development.
Thank you so much. Cover letters seem to be a hot topic in this chat. So I'm going to ask the question. Is having a cover letter necessary to include when applying for web developer or software engineer jobs? Christy, who submitted the question, is a recent bootcamp grad in the industry. And someone, sorry, I read that one wrong. A recent grad in the industry mentioned not that including a cover letter did not help. Do you agree, disagree? What would you recommend for applicants who are including a cover letter or not?
To be honest, I have never had a cover letter ever. Whenever I see like a company is asking for a cover letter, I don't have one. I'm not gonna write one because each cover letter needs to be unique to a company. I did it once at the beginning as a junior, and I noticed that for each company, I'll spend about like 30 minutes to write the cover letter because you have to tailor it to their needs. And that to me personally, I didn't find as good experience in that regard. So whenever I see a company asking for a cover letter and it's a requirement document to submit, I just skip that job because if that's what they want, well, that's not what I want because I want to work at a company that also aligns with my need of what I want to do. So if they're asking for a cover letter, they can ask for it. I'm just not going to apply to the job. I'll go to the job that doesn't ask for one. That's just how I see things. And that's not something that, if you don't feel like doing it, you don't have to. But if that is something that you do want to write one, no one is stopping you. Still go ahead and do that because some of the great companies ask for a cover letter. Or if that you're planning to work at a bank, I believe they do require for you to submit one. But if you're looking at the startup companies, usually they don't ask for that type of cover letter. So I wouldn't worry about that. Also, that's probably one more thing I should mention is when you are applying for jobs, like type of jobs I wanted to apply for as a junior is a startup job because that's where you're going to be learning quite a lot of things. It's going to be a really fast-paced environment, and they're really investing into their junior developers. So there's that.
You got a couple comments in there that is kind of a relief that a cover letter may not be necessary. And I've actually seen that too, everyone, just so you know, from the alumni side of things. Cover letters are very hit or miss. And there's no right or wrong answer on this. Some companies require them and some companies don't care as much. They care more about your portfolio and your resume, less cover letters. So take it for what it is. If other companies do request that cover letter, obviously send it along. But most of the ones that I have seen and the feedback that I have received from people who are interviewing, the cover letter did not get them very far. So take that for what that is. Okay, so back to the chat. A question about how to simplify the process of the very daunting and complicated job hunt. How can you simplify it, and how can you make sure that you don't get tired out applying to jobs and going through the interviews and all that goes into the interviews and dealing with recruiters? How can you simplify it and make it less complicated?
That process by itself, unfortunately, is not simple, but at the same time, it's simple to explain. So when I was applying for junior positions, I was applying to 10 different jobs a day. And that's why I wasn't writing any cover letters. I didn't have time for that. And whenever I do get an interview with a company, I start to notice that some of the questions, they start to get repetitive. Some of the things start to get repetitive. So at the beginning, you'll notice that it's kind of difficult. But once you keep on doing that, once you have, let's say, like 5 interviews a day or 5 interviews a week, sorry, you'll notice that they're getting similar, repetitive, and you're getting less start from it. I was getting a lot of like rejections, and I was okay with it, to be honest. In fact, I like the fact that they rejected me. Number one, because that means that we weren't aligned with specific things, as well as it had nothing to do with my technical skills. It could actually do with your personality. Because for instance, whenever I look at a person, each company has its own environment, its own type of feel. And whenever they hire a person, they do see this great person, this great, with great skills, but the personality traits, they just don't align. So it has nothing to do with you. It's more about just what they like. And whenever you look for a company, they reject you also not because of your skills, but because of their personality. And it's not like there's something wrong with the personality. It's just some companies just have uh, different cultures or whatever it is. So, but again, yeah, when you look for a job at the beginning, it is kind of, it could be painful. To me, I looked at it as a journey. And to give you an example, actually, so as you're building out, let's say, a computer right now, the most difficult part for you to find these days, unfortunately, is the GPU. So what you do is you start to search where can you buy that GPU, and it's going to take you some time to find it. But once you do find it, you have it. Your full computer is built and ready for work. And exactly the same thing goes here. You hunt for it. You uh, uh, go to different interviews to talk to different recruiters. A lot of them are friendly. For some of them, I've noticed if they're unexperienced, they're not going to know what type of questions to ask. The whole first call is going to be kind of a nonsense. So don't think that it's you did something wrong. It's more like just it's their first time and they're not quite entirely sure what to do. So I see it as a journey to success.
Thank you. Like I'm seeing a couple head nods. So thank you for answering that. And I do see the demand for the next question in the chat. Everyone has the same question. So I'm going to ask that question about gaps in your resume. Some people have 1 year because they took time off to do the boot camp and now they're trying to find their job, or 8 to 10 years because they went into a different industry. Now they're trying to get back into tech. What advice do you have for someone who is dealing with that big gap in their career and on their resume? Any advice?
Well, even if you have a big gap in your resume, first, as long as it's explainable why you have such a big gap, I don't see that as a flag. I've seen people had 2-3 years of a gap, 5 years, but those years they were working, they were doing something. It's not like you're not doing anything. As long as that gap can be justified by what you were doing, then it's all fine. Like we all make changes as we progress in life. Like today, for instance, I can be a web developer, but tomorrow I can go into a business world, and then the question will be, well, I see you've been a web developer for this time. How come you decide to be a business person? And then there's going to be still explanation of why I decided to make this career switch. And but at the same time, it's not going to be a red flag on me because I wasn't just sitting around doing nothing. I was focused doing something else. What I'm bringing onto the table is another skill. And that's exactly what you're bringing. Even if you have that gap, if you're doing something and you can show it or you can explain it, then it's justifiable. It's completely fine. If the company doesn't accept that, that's just, to be honest, I've never seen that, to be honest, where like company did not accept somebody because they had a 3-year gap doing something else.
I feel like as long as you have those projects or you have a reason to show your gap and explain it, people will understand that. Exactly. I know you have to get through to actually be able to explain it, but have your projects ready, have what you were doing ready. This one goes to a resume. A couple of people actually asked if you had a template that you use that you were most successful with.
For my resume?
For your resume, yeah. If there was a template that you use that you were successful.
I don't have a template, but the way I was building out my resume, first, what I will put on my resume is the skills that I have. Oh, first, sorry, I'll put on the summary of what is it that I'm looking for. Next is going to be the skills that I currently have. Next are going to be the projects that I have built. And after that, I will have the school that I went to. And if you already have working experience, I'll put that as well, because that is something that that is going to show them that you already have expertise in some area and you have already been working in the past. So you are a professional person. And later down the line, as you keep on progressing, your resume will be growing. Your resume actually will be changing little by little. So that was like, you can say the template at the beginning when I was applying for junior position. But today, all what I have, just one page full of jobs where I used to work before. And the second page just consists of skills I currently have, school I went to, hobby, and that's pretty much it. So the second page can actually be removed and I just have one page resume. So I'm trying to keep my resume very, very minimalistic, but at the same time clean to show what my skills are and what is that I'm bringing to the table. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And do you change up your resume each time that you apply for a job to kind of match it, or do you just submit the same resume?
I actually changed my resume, or I edit my resume every time I learn a new skill. If there is some new project, I'm starting doing it. I'm already putting that on the resume because I will forget to put that into my resume. If there is a framework that I'm learning right now, I will put that on my resume right now, even if I haven't finished learning the framework yet, because I know that I'm learning it right now. I know how to set it up. I know a few things about it. So I'm confident to talk about it a little bit. And I'll be more confident to talk about it in the future. And that's how I keep on developing my resume, even as I'm working right now. Whatever specific tasks that I do, it doesn't matter how big, how small the task is. We as people, we will forget about it a year, 2 years from now. But as soon as you write it down, it's there. You're not going to forget about it. And that's how I keep on building and changing my resume as I progress every day.
That's good advice. So if you're learning a new technology, just add it to your resume, because as long as you're comfortable speaking towards it, obviously.
Exactly, yeah.
Perfect. So we're going to take about 5 more questions. Abigail asked, how did you prepare for the technical interview phase of the hiring process?
For that, what I did is I saw there are multiple websites like LeetCode. I tried to take a look at that. It has some really good brain teaser questions in different languages. And there are multiple websites where you can go take a look at few questions in different languages, how you can test it out. But whenever I practice something, first I ask myself, what is it the language I want to go into and write the code in? Because you'll be asked to write code in a language, and it's a language of your choosing. I usually go with JavaScript because I know whatever it is I'll be writing in, uh, it's going to compile, it's going to work, and I can talk about it freely and confidently. And that's what I'll use. I'll use JavaScript. And whenever I practice different coding questions that I find online, I'll try either to use a piece of paper to walk through the logic process, and then I'll just try to practice using that language every day for like 6 hours. If I have to, I'll do that until I'll get tired and sick out of it. And that's how you want to practice for your interview questions is number one, brain teaser questions. And number two, choose the language that you're comfortable with and use that language during your interview. And they'll be asking you very, very little questions. Even the questions like, okay, I see you have used lit whenever you're declaring a variable in a JavaScript. Why did you use lit? Why didn't you use variable? Why didn't you use const? And you're going to have to be able to explain that. Why did you do that? And you have to be able, yeah, to explain pretty much every line that you are writing on a piece of paper, on a whiteboard, or during the in a code.
Perfect, thank you. And I do see that people also drop some resources into the chat, so click on those so you don't lose them. Ashley asked, regarding portfolios, would it be better to build your own portfolio from scratch or to use a website templating if design is not your strong suit?
If you're just starting out, I'll suggest for you to build your own portfolio website from scratch because you'll be learning the skills you have learned. And that's a really good time for you to practice. And then that is something you can also show it during your interview process. Your portfolio will have projects. Your portfolio itself is a project of itself that you can share it with other people. But if you are planning to apply to be a freelancer, have your own corporation, to me personally, I just use a template that I found online because I don't want to spend time developing that because it does take a little bit of time to develop it since there are a lot of things happening on that website. And it's a professional type of a website. That's where your clients will be looking at. So when you're developing your portfolio, who is it you're building it for? Is it just for recruiters, for your full-time position, or is it for clients?
Thank you. How about this one? I've been told that you should follow up after applying to a job. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because you're applying to a ton of jobs, and that'll mean that you spend a lot of time doing follow-up. What are your tips or advice, or do you not think you should follow up?
100%. Whenever I go to an interview, there's going to be me, there's going to be 50 other great developers. And the interview consists, your interview still continues after you have done the interview. To me, for example, I know that I'll be interviewing a lot of interns for a position. And if I'll see all of them did great, then how do I know who to choose? I can literally roll a dice on them, pick a random one. But if I got an email, a thankful mail from uh, uh, a person thanking me, thanking for taking my time to interview them, then I'll remember that person. That is something that stands out already as a character of a person because they're thanking me. I'll remember them. And if there is something they did on an interview, even I'm also putting that at the end of my email, where like I remember talking about this specific thing during the interview. I've taken my time to take a look at this specific thing, or whatever it is. Let's say. Memcache or whatever it is, could be on front end or back end or in data analysis, the question you could have missed or you think you could improve on, answer that in the email as well. So thank a person that was interviewing you, update some of the questions that you would like to update, because that is something that people look at as well. And that's another way to remember you. And the chances, I think, do increase actually. Yeah.
Perfect. So follow up and make it personal.
Exactly.
Joel had posted a question in the chat that made me laugh because I know exactly what memes he's talking about on LinkedIn. Joel said, I see a lot of memes on LinkedIn saying to just apply, even though you may not have all the skills that are asked for. So for example, one of the positions he saw was something with 5 years experience and of React experience, and he may not have that. Do you still apply? Do you skip over it? What do you, I know, you kind of touched on the experience and what that really means. Would you apply to something that you may not have that 5 to 10 year experience? Maybe you have 2 to 3, maybe you only have 1. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Like, I will have a mark of how many jobs do I want to apply to that I know relevant to me, but I'll still search for jobs. And if I see a job that's saying 5 years of experience, I'm like, okay, I mean, they're not stopping me to apply to the job. Nothing is stopping me. I can still apply. Maybe they will like my resume, maybe don't. I don't know until I try it, and it doesn't hurt to try. So if you see a job that does ask for 5 years or whatever years of experience, and it's looks a little bit complex, you can still apply for it and see what you're going to get.
Perfect. And this question kind of goes along with that. The question was that they're having a hard time finding that entry level position. Do they go for internships instead, or do they just keep applying with the hopes that they'll get that entry level?
Those two things today, they are very, very similar. So for instance, companies, whenever they're looking for interns, some of the companies, they don't take interns as an intern. They are giving them an actual junior jobs so they can be familiar with it, they can learn it, they're trying to invest in them. That's another way of welcoming them back. And if you're applying for a job, if it's saying if it's saying a junior, if it's an intern job, apply to both. Just make sure that you're getting compensated for it, because I've noticed for some companies, for some reason, they don't pay their interns, and I don't think that's quite legal anymore. So make sure that whenever you're applying for a job, that standard meets. And whenever you apply, you gotta be uh, a little bit not eager, but uh, willing yet to apply to multiple jobs. So if you see a job you can apply to, apply, but make sure that you do research on the company, because sometimes the description might look good. And what I like to do is I like to go onto their website. I want to take a look at when did they start the company, what is it that they're doing, and I see how big their team is, because all of that is telling me how good of the company is.
Okay, thank you. That's great advice. Let's see. I just had the question. Oh, here it is. I know we just talked about the portfolios, either building it or using something online, but do you have any advice for creating a website or an online portfolio?
Uh, the first thing I would recommend is try to use free tools at the beginning to develop your portfolio. The first thing, of course, you do need is a domain name. What you could do is you could use a free GitHub source to create your website, or for your domain name if you don't mind having a random name in your domain. But if you want to have a custom domain, I will suggest there's this website I believe called the can't remember the name right now. I'll try to send you the link later. But you're pretty much paying for the domain for like $5 to $10 depending on the domain name a year, and you're developing your website uh, using that domain. That's the only thing you'll be paying for. The rest is pretty much free. So to set up your website, you'll use Heroku, or that's what I used at first, Heroku, because it's just free to use. I don't have to pay for that. And I'll run all of my projects there. I'll run my portfolio there at first. And once you're getting more experience with it, and if your project requires a bit more of a serious setup, I'll recommend going with DigitalOcean. That's where you can run your project, and why not? And another tool I also would recommend as well is called Netlify. There you go, Netlify. It's a great tool to use. It's free to use, and that's where actually I'm running my own portfolio right now. You don't have to pay for it, and it's free to some extent. But that is something I would recommend for you to use. You can connect it directly to your GitHub project, your GitHub portfolio, and whenever you make changes on your computer to that project, to your portfolio, you push it to your GitHub, and the whole CI/CD, you can set it up quite easy, and it will automatically deploy to your Heroku project. So that is one of the tools I'll also recommend for your portfolio.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for looking for that resource. There's one topic we didn't touch on, which I was kind of surprised I only saw a couple, one or two questions on this, recruiters. How do you handle recruiters who cold call, who don't really take the time to actually like look at your resume or don't really understand your actual qualifications for the job? How do you handle those recruiters?
I mean, if recruiter didn't take time to take a look at my resume, didn't take time to get to know me, there is no reason why I should be taking my time to waste on those recruiters. I do get like 5 to 6 recruiter emails every day, even though they know I'm working, but I'm not replying to them because every recruiter's email is pretty much copy paste. The only few recruiters you'll see that's quite respectful of you, and those are the type of recruiters I prefer to reply to are the ones that are working at this company. So if you see a recruiter who's not just looking for a candidate for this specific, not looking for a developer for this specific client that they have, but they're actually looking for a developer for their own company, those are the type of recruiters I do reply to. I do prefer to keep a good contact with, because they're the ones who are more focused on getting to know you because you're the one who'll be working at their company.
Perfect, thank you. And we are going to wrap this up. I want to be aware of everyone's time. Arnhem, do you have one piece of advice for the job search, making that career change, or learning a new technology while going through all of this fun with job hunting? What's your one piece of advice you want everyone to leave with today?
The one very important advice I'd like to give you is when you are focused on one specific task, don't take yourself away from it. If you're focused on searching for the specific job, or if you're focused on learning specific thing, focus on that. Don't be distracted by any unnecessary noise whenever you look for a job, whenever you're learning a new piece of technology. And remember that when you're enrolled in this bootcamp, you are equivalently, what is the word? Sorry. You're similarly competitive to people who did go to schools for software development, who went to school like for 3 to 4 years. You're a competitor for them as well. Those are the people that are afraid of you because you do have a professional background. You went to a bootcamp with a focus to be specifically a web developer, to be specifically in data analysis. You have the focus that they unfortunately do not have because they've been taught everything and they don't think in a similar way as you guys do. So keep that in mind, that don't get stressed, don't get nervous. Beginning is always difficult. Everyone were in the same position, but once you pass this bridge, you'll notice that later down the line, once you finish with a junior position for 1 year, once you quit the job to get a different type of a salary or whatever the case might be, to find a second job is going to be much, much easier for you. So just keep that in mind.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking your time today to share all your tips and advice on this crazy job hunt and just for everything you covered today. For everybody who attended, you received an email probably about a minute ago with some of Artem's resources. Check out his YouTube channel. He has some great videos on there. They're not crazy long either, so you can definitely watch them and they will definitely help you build either your resume or build different skills, learn different technologies. So definitely check that out. I also sent out on that email our past recordings. I know everyone, some of the actually recognize a lot of your names. So I have seen some requests for the past recordings. Those are all on there. So check those out too. And I hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday. Please reach out if you have any questions. This recording will be live in about a week or so on our YouTube channel. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Artem, thank you again. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
It was a very good session. Thank you.